In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this Fragments of Light project. If we look over here in the Layers panel, you can see that there's a background layer, a hue and saturation adjustment layer, a curves adjustment layer, and then two text layers, and each one has a drop shadow on it. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, you need to make a new document, and we'll call it Fragments of Light, and put your name on it. And let's make it 12 inches wide by 9 inches high, resolution 72, because we're not going to print this. If we were going to print this, we would make it 300 resolution. Click OK, and you'll have a nice blank document. Alright, the first thing that we're going to do is add some grain to this by going to Filter, Texture, and Grain. So on these options over here on the side, we're going to make the intensity 100 and the contrast 100 and set the grain type to clumped and click OK. So now we have some pastel kind of sprinkled dots on our background. Alrighty, so step 3, we're going to make these large colored particles. So we would just want to double check that over here in the toolbox that we have white and black in these options and not any other colors. So if you have colors here, just click these little tiny black and white squares and it will restore these to the defaults. Okay, so let's go to Filter, Pixelate, Pointillize. And we're going to set the cell size to very large, 170, and click OK. And you'll see what that does to the grainy texture. It makes these large blobs. Next thing that we're going to do is kind of smooth these out a little bit by adding some noise. So Filter, Noise, and we're going to choose median. So in the radius right here, I chose 93. You can move the slider around and choose something a little bit different if you want to. So I'm going to click OK on this. So now we have these interesting kind of blobby shapes, but they're really light in color. So we are going to make them a little bit darker in the next few steps. So the first thing that we're going to do is invert this on the keyboard, hold down Control and push the I key. So now this has gone from light pastel colors to dark colors. So we are going to sharpen this to make the edges a little bit brighter by going to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask, and we're really going to crank up the amount to 500%. So make the slider go all the way over. We're going to make the radius about 42 and the threshold 3. Again, you can experiment with these values to get different effects if you want to. Alright, and we can see the changes there. Nice and bright, but now we have these kind of colored bands, these lines that are going through the colors. So we want to smooth those out a little bit. So what we're going to do is blur it. So Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, Smart Blur, and set the radius to about 5 and the threshold to about 18. And if I look in the preview right here, I can see that those bands are smoothed out. If they aren't smoothed out in your project, go ahead and make it a little bit more until you see that all the bands are gone. So I'm going to leave these options down here the way they are. So I'm going to click OK, and that's a nice improvement. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is choose over here in the Layers panel, go to this half white, half black button, which is Adjustments, and I'm going to choose Curves. So up here in the Curves panel, what I'm going to do is click a point to this line here, and then I'm going to drag it to make this brighter, and that looks good to me. So these values down here will be different according to your image. So for my image, I think this looks good. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is go to create new fill or adjustment layer again, and this time I'm going to use hue and saturation. These colors are a little bit too bright and artificial, so I'm going to tone them down just a little bit. I'm going to click the colorize button and then leave the hue 0 and the lightness 0, but I'm going to make the saturation 64. So it makes it kind of an all-over red tone. So I don't want it to be all one color. So I'm just going to, over here in the layers panel, on the hue and saturation layer, I'm going to click the fill and take it down to just enough where I think that it's not neon bright, but it's not too red. So for this particular image, I like 31%. Your image could be different. Okay, let's see here. And the last thing that I'm going to do is add some text to this. So over here, I don't want my text to be black because I don't think that's going to show up. So I'm going to click this little double-headed arrow right here, and that makes the white go on top. Then I'm going to grab the text tool, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to write color, all caps. And you can highlight this and go through and choose whatever font you think looks good. I already chose Hobo, so I'll leave it there. I'll click the little check mark, and I can take the move tool and move this around somewhere where I think it stands out really well. And actually this is kind of a dark spot right here, and it has really nice contrast, so I think I'm actually going to leave it right up here in this corner. This might be another good spot down here. And I'm going to get the text tool again and type, "Let it fill your life." And that's a little bit too large, so I'm going to highlight it, and yeah, that looks good. Move it up a little bit closer. All right, now depending on your colors of your background, these might not show up very well, so I'm going to show you how to make the text pop out a little bit. So I have "Let It Fill Your Life" selected over here in the layers panel. I'm going to click the FX button and push drop shadow, and I'm just going to leave it with the default settings and click OK. And I'm going to go to color and do the same thing, drop shadow, and leave the default settings. So if I turn off the eyeball here, you can see the effect that that had. It just put a little gray, dark gray shadow behind the text, and it makes it stand out a lot better. Okay, so what I'm going to do is save this. Then I'm going to save a copy as a JPEG and put it on the Photoshop page of my photo portfolio. That's it for now.